about sex on television. Carole Mallory Wagner starred as Madge in the play Picnic and as Tiffany in Mary Mary at the Bucks County Playhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. During the early 70s, she studied with Wynn Hannon, the director of the American Police Theater in New York, where she was classmates with such notables as Richard Gere and Brad Davis. When she moved to Hollywood, she studied with Harvey Lambeck and his comedy improv workshop, as she was classmates with Robin Williams. In 1983, she began to study writing at UCLA, Columbia, and New York University with Margaret Atwood. At this time, she entered into a multifaceted relationship with writer Norman Mailer, who became her mentor. Carole quit acting after her last film, Take This Job and Shove It, after Norman Mailer saw her writing skill and encouraged her to become a writer. In 1988, she authored the novel Flash, about a female alcoholic surviving Hollywood. Gloria Steinem wrote that it was fast, smart, and irresistible in her review. Her relationship with Norman Mailer lasted 9 years. Harvard University, Mailer's alma mater, purchased her writing with his edits on them, all her notes, her photographs, and tape recordings after his death in 2008. In 2010, Carole published a memoir, Loving Mailer. Subsequently, she published a memoir, Picasso's Ghost, in 2013, By Dow versus Mailer in 2016, My Friendship with Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller, 2013, and My Friendship with Norman Mailer and Gort Vidal and How They Bury the Hatchet in 2013. Between 1983 and 1996, working as a journalist, she interviewed Kurt Vonnegut, Joseph Heller, Gore Vidal, Doug Moore, Brooke Astor, Jesse Jackson, Erica John, Joseph Kennedy II, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Isabella Rossellini, songwriter Jerry, You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog Lieber, George Plimpton, Milos Forman, and many other notables. Her writings have been published in the New York Times, the LA Times, Esquire, Playboy, Parade, Elle, New Woman, Time Out, and M magazines. The Philadelphia Inquirer asked her to review the Kurt Vonnegut biography by Shields titled, And So It Goes. She also still reviews movies, most recently The Little Mermaid, which is available on her blog, Mallory Hollywood East, blogspot.com. She has taught memoir writing at Rosemont College, Cheltenham Adult School, and Widener University. Today, Carole continues making a difference in the community as a lecturer who goes to senior communities, talks about her amazing accomplishments and everything she's done in order to instill a will to live through perseverance and living in the now. She also lectures on Pablo Picasso, as she was engaged to his son Claude for many years. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the very interesting Carole Mallory.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank Springfield High for this honor and Peggy for the lovely introduction. And once I get in this seat, I have to wiggle a bit like I did in the old years ago. In high school, I was a member of the band, the orchestra. I played lacrosse badly, hockey, basketball. I was in the National Honor Society. I was a cheerleader. I was a candidate for prom queen. I was in Future Teachers of America and Future Farmers of America. And behind my back, I was ridiculed by students and called a joiner. And that's exactly what I was, because I didn't want to go home. In 1955, my father came down with a breakdown, a nervous breakdown, and doctors suggested a lobotomy, and they gave him one during which they discovered he had Parkinson's disease. They apologized. He was my hero. His hero was General Lou Wagner, who fought the Second Battle of Bull Run. And my father was blue blood, but after the operation, his favorite pastime was weeding because he didn't twitch on all fours. If anybody had the privilege of watching The View, or Michael, what's his name? Help me. Michael J. Fox. They had the courage to show Parkinson's, not to just talk about it. And to watch it is really hard. So my life was really dedicated to running from my father's suffering. I became an overachiever because my father wanted to be a great success. So I was fortunately awarded an art scholarship from Springfield, and I chose a school as far away as possible. It was Penn State, and I was in a sorority as Phi Beta Phi, and they nominated me for, is he smiling? I hope so. For, what is it, Miss Penn State. So I had a float and all that, and I fell in love with a football player. Maybe some of you remember him, a running back called Dick Hope. He went on to play for the Steelers and became a coach. He won 5 Super Bowls, and today he's in a nursing home in Greensburg, and I'm trying to go to see him. I haven't seen him since 1963, and the last time we talked, I said, I love you, and he said, I love you back. His wife has died. So that's basically what I wanted to say, that I was a joiner. I said that point because I wanted to get away from home. And Springfield really saved my life. It was an escape. I felt safe here. One story I want to tell, I want to say about teachers. When my father first had his breakdown, I was in 7th grade, and I would leave it, remember you go from room to room to room, and I had a trail. And there were books here, books there, and 2 teachers, and I still remember their names, Mr. Allison and Mrs. Scott, called my parents and said they were worried about me, which I think is so wonderful. They didn't have to do that. That was not on their 9 to 5 schedule, but they cared because Springfield teachers cared. I went on after I graduated from Penn State, and then Dick and I separated. I went back to watching my father, which was horrible. So I thought, I have to fly away from them all. So I went to TWA. I was going to be a flight attendant, and they wouldn't hire me. But my story is about perseverance. So I thought, you're not the only one. So I went to Pan Am, and they hired me. And you know why? Because I had high school French, which I learned from Springfield High. So I flew around the world for 2 years, airsick, and then I thought, well, I'll get a medical leave of absence. Yes, every flight. I used to buy drugs in Bangkok for air sickness. Didn't help. And so I thought, well, I've got it. And passengers would say, oh, you have beautiful blue eyes, you should model. I thought, maybe I should try that. So I'm telling you, perseverance. So I went to Paris. I said, 2 months, I'll give it a shot. I stayed in the Hotel du Ministère, which was a walk-up with the WC, if you know what that means, down the hall. And sure enough, within 2 months, I was hired by French Vogue. The shots are somewhere over there. And booked by the best photographer in the world, Guy Bourdin. And it was a real accomplishment, but I didn't like Paris. I don't like the pretense. So I missed a hamburger. So I went to, I'm getting out of here. I went home, and I went to Eileen Ford. You may remember her, the agency, and I showed her my pictures. And she said, lovely darling, why didn't you stay there? Well, I didn't want to hear that, but she hired me. And sure enough, in 2 months, she fired me. So Perseverance, I went to Stewart, and they hired me, and I went on to be a supermodel on the covers of lots of magazines. So my story is about Perseverance. I don't have to tell you what I did because the lovely Peggy DeGrasse did that spiel. So, but I do want to tell you a story that when I was with my ex-husband, he had a mother who loved the rich and famous. She said, if you can have a rich friend or a poor one, pick the rich. So we had, honestly, and this is so disgusting, but I loved it. So we had a lot. He was a sculptor who worked with Mercury, Ron Mallory. He did the mural in the Once Upon a Time Twin Towers restaurant of the Andrea Doria. So we would go around with these, and if you're in the art world, the really, really rich people are collectors, such as those people, you know, for, what is it, help me, Mortimer Sackler and Purdue Pharmacy. You know, they mask their avarice with being art collectors. So Sackler actually got him a studio in New York, paid for it. But I don't forgive them for that, for what the harm they've caused people. So anyway, there Ron and I are in Saint-Tropez, and in those days, sorry, we were all topless. Everybody was topless, and I had a bullet belt on my bikini bottom. I'm coming out of the water, and Ron is talking to a very large man. And now in Saint-Tropez, everybody's beautiful, so it doesn't count. But the boats do, so what you try to do is figure out who owns what boat. So, and how to get on it. So Ron introduces me to, this is Sam Spiegel. And some of you may remember, and otherwise will, he produced Lawrence of Arabia, African Queen, Bridge on the River Kwai. And I said, oh, it's nice to meet you, Sam. We just love your boat, the Melanie. He said, do you want to come on a cruise tomorrow at 6 a.m.? We're going to Corsica. And I thought, you bet. We're there. We were there. So we set sail, and our first port was in Porto Cervo. Some of you may know the town, very elite. And the first man who came up held his hand out. He said, I'm Kirk Douglas, and boy was he nice, and boy was he handsome. So our second port was Portofino, where we met David Niven, who was very nice. Unfortunately, he was coming down, I think, with Lou Gehrig's disease, so his charm was a bit on hold. His wife was named Yordis, who was Swedish, and she really, really, really represented David in the way he once was. So we arrive at Corsica, and my ex-husband go down, and then remember the day of the Super 8, this is about 1968. So we go down to the port, and we look at who's coming. There's a little rowboat with a woman with a battered straw hat, white bathing suit, and red rubber thongs, a little tot, and a man, and it was Princess Grace and Prince Rainier and Prince Albert. And they came on board. Now, Sam Spiegel didn't know what's called protocol. I'm sure most of you do, but there were 8 of us, and there's a certain rule for how to seat people next to royalty. So what does Sam do? But he starts saying, yell, 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 yell. And Grace said, no, please. She didn't like yelling. No. So Prince Rainier said, don't worry, Sam. Now, I want to say, I've learned with the rich and famous, so many don't have self-esteem or self-love, and that's why they use drugs and drink. But anyway, that's a separate sidebar. So she said, Sam, be quiet. No. So Prince Rainier said, don't worry, Sam, I'll sit next to Carole. So that's how I got Prince Rainier by my side. Now, what the hell do you say to a prince, okay? So I said, what sign are you? The dumbest question in the world. And he says, well, I'm a Gemini. I said, well, not only am I a Capricorn, but I'm from Philadelphia. And Princess Grace says, me too. I said, I know. And then I said, I used to teach school in Lower Marion. She said, well, I'm from near there. I said, I know. And then she said to Sam, well, I'm glad to see you have some class on this yacht instead of that Hollywood riffraff. And I felt like she was a sister I always longed for. I have a sister, but our relationship is 50-50. I'll leave it at that. So then we went up to the top deck and I did push-ups at her feet. We had been drinking, I was drinking in those days. And of course I felt inferior to her, so there's nothing like a lot of wine to cover that up. So I'm doing push-ups and I fell on my face at her feet and I said, "Je suis mal élevée." And if anybody knows what that means in French, it means I am badly raised. Well, it means about heritage, not about push-ups. So she laughed at my bad pun, and I really fell in love with her. When she died, I think it was in '86, I wrote Prince Rainier, which required, of course, calling a lot of people and figuring out how to do it. And he kindly wrote me back a letter. When I lecture, I asked Chris to read it, or Kathy, to the seniors, and they enjoy it. But in closing, I want to say that, if I can see, I don't want to put my glasses on. Norman Mailer taught me that experiences were godlike, the most important thing in the world. He also hated adverbs, that's to Lisa, I want to say, and Hemingway didn't like adjectives, so we're left with the bare bones. So perseverance has been my motto. Today I find joy in living in the now and facing a new challenge. I am currently working on a podcast, which I hope you all download, called Carole Recalls, Dating Some, Kissing Others, and Telling It All, dedicated to E.G. and Carole. It will be launched on July 4th in the celebration of the independent woman. I'm currently grateful I was Springfield High, and who would nurture me through a difficult childhood, and helping me to believe in a sense of purpose. I am 43 years sober, and when I feel my character defects, which are many, and dormant surface, I run to an AA meeting. I just chaired one last night. I do one once a month. And they help me, if I allow them to stay in the now and stay centered. And forget the fame, fortune nonsense. I also want to thank Jane Fonda, who said life gets better with age. Mine certainly has. And I also want to thank Chris and Kathy, who helped me with it. Chris Duvall, Kathy Hudson, my niece Wendy Clifford, and I think Audrey is here somewhere, Batson, who came today. But mostly Springfield High for honoring me and giving me this joy and pleasure. Keep coming back.
Are you worried Bree how everything she is?
Oh, God, did I hurt the boy? Thank you so much.
Here, Carole,